What if you had the smartest Wi-Fi? If you did, it'd be Xfinity and it'd come with their best state-of-the-art equipment. It would boost speeds to the devices that needed them most, whether you were streaming, gaming, or gaming while pretending to work. It would even power your mobile connection so you could bring faster, secure Wi-Fi speeds with you where you use it most. If you had the smartest Wi-Fi, everything would work together seamlessly to keep you connected. Xfinity. Imagine that. Restrictions apply.
Welcome to another edition of the Jayhawker Podcast. And man, as a class of 1998 Kansas Jayhawk, I got to say I am really excited for this one. As always, we are brought to you by Xfinity and by the University of Kansas Health Systems. And I'm talking to one of the all-time great Kansas Jayhawks who's now back in a coaching role, Jacque Vaughn. Two-time academic All-American of the Year, not to mention all Big Eight, All-American as a player as well, NBA coach, NBA player, and now back at the University of Kansas. Coach, how are you, man?
I'm good, Nate. This is inaugural for me. This is my first podcast ever, and I'm doing it with you.
Okay, let's get it started. That I can't tell you. So I was one of those nerd kids sitting in the student section. I think I told you before we started. Fourth row. I remember exactly where I was when you had the spin move against UCLA. I'm almost positive that was my freshman year. We camped out and everything for it. But to get to sit here with you and then for you to say that to me, you don't have any idea how the kid in me right now is excited to have that, to be able to say that.
We get to share this together, partner. So, I love the podcast space, the podcast world. I listen to podcasts really every single day. And so doing the first one, doing it with you.
I read that you are a big fan of podcasts about entrepreneurs, people that have started big businesses, companies, things like that. Founders, is that the name of the one that you
Founders,
like?
Yeah. I'm a big, pretty steady listener. I pretty much don't go a day without listening to a podcast. And so Founders gives me an opportunity to kind of get in the mind space of guys who have been extremely creative and extremely successful, built businesses from different ways. It's a great, coaching tool because I've learned how to do things differently than others have before.
Can you think of one lesson you learned from the Founders Podcast that you take into your daily life or into your profession? Like a story from a founder, like, oh, I never thought about things that way.
Oh, I think that curiosity is a superpower. I think you stay curious in your profession, and it's so really relevant to the day. Like you see, the game is changing. The game of basketball, whether you're shooting more threes now, where it's more analytically driven, whether 5-out spacing, whether it's big guys playing as small guys handling the basketball. I think that's all from people being curious and really testing the boundaries of the game.
You've experienced the game at every level, highest level when you were a college player, played in the NBA, coached in the NBA. When you were here, it was the Big Eight. Now it's the Big 12, and the Big 12 doesn't look anything like it did just a couple years ago. The landscape has changed as well. But there's an old phrase that says that the more things change, the more they stay the same. And I'm kind of curious now, after all these years being back in college at the same university, maybe how do you see things have changed, but also how do you think things have stayed the same?
I think the same part is pretty easy for me. This is the best college atmosphere in the world. There's no better place to play college basketball than University of Kansas. I'll put that up against anyone who wants to argue. And so that has remained the same. It's been very interesting being back on campus, and I've taken it all in, whether that's walking around in the field house, seeing the new additions, whether it's the concourse looks different, which looks amazing, looks great, but I've also stepped on the floor and felt the same feeling of walking through the tunnel and being on the fieldhouse court, and that feels great and feels the same. The fans feel the same, being able to camp out and see individuals line up to see a basketball game. Those things have remained the same, which is great. I was in the locker room the other day before the game. Didn't think anyone was in there, just kind of taking up the feel and getting my mind right before the first game. And Samis walked in and said, "Coach, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm just enjoying this moment right here." So it's been great to get back in the space that I had a lot of great memories in.
I was talking to some of the young staffers a week or two ago when they started telling me I was going to get to do this interview with you, and I just assumed they knew all about you and the team. And I realized they weren't even born, so it's kind of crazy. And I was telling him that he played for what I would still say was the greatest basketball team I ever saw at the University of Kansas, that 1997 team. And you guys, by the way, when you talk about the field house, you didn't have a scoreboard or a video board. It was just an old light scoreboard. How crazy is it to see the video production and everything now here?
It's great. The introductory video is amazing. The way it just encompasses the history and the traditions that we have. It's pretty cool to look at it before the game. Like I said, walking around, just seeing the additions have been merged with the traditional elements that made this place as special to this day as it did when I was here as a 17, 18-year-old.
So referring back to that 97 team, and if you're watching this or listening to this and you don't know, just, go ahead and look it up. But those of us from my generation can name all the players on that team, right? Because, and I think this is going to be good to transition into your comments about the way the game has evolved, because that was your old school when we grew up. 1 through 5. You were the 1. Jared was the 2. Paul was the 3. Rafe was the 4. Scott was the 5. And basketball doesn't seem to quite follow that same blanket formula anymore, does it?
It's pretty cool to see, though. And it's some European influence also. I think the game is more worldly than ever before. You're seeing that in a number of guys that are foreign-based in the NBA right now. I think the biggest number ever in NBA history. Even during the portal right now, you see guys from the European game being able to introduce to the college atmosphere. But Rafe was a little bit before his time. He grabbed the rebound and he outlet it to me, and then I started to break. Now, as a 4-man, he would be starting to break. He would be shooting threes. He was just a little bit before his time.
Yeah, I remember that because he could shoot. And I remember Roy saying sometimes, yeah, but then he's not down low rebounding. That was the way you kind of looked at low post players back then. It's different now.
Very different now. And then you have the ability for guards also. They're just not distributors like I was. They're guys who are more scoring combo guards. You really don't have traditional point guards like you used to have in the past. Guys can score the ball and still distribute.
The college game is also different in terms of the NIL situation and the transfer portal than when you played. I mean, I think about Paul Pierce was a junior still playing in college, at that time. I don't know if that would be the case if he was coming through college right now. I'm curious how different you find coaching today's kid than what it was like when you were playing.
The interesting thing is I'm not sure that 97 team would have existed in NIL space. I'm not sure all of us could have been, under the same salary cap.
Yeah.
So glad we didn't have it back then in some aspects because that team, like you said, was I'll never forget that team. It didn't end the way we wanted to, but some part of it is the journey and the relationships that I'll have forever with that team. This different space that we live in, I think the best thing for me is I've accepted that this is the world as it is. And you got to thrive in knowing that guys are getting paid, okay? But it doesn't change that it still says Kansas across the front of the jersey. Now, maybe they're not with us for 4 years like Scott and I were, and we roomed together in 412C of the Jayhawker Towers for 4 years. Maybe that doesn't happen, but you still love and you still cherish. Maybe it's a year, a 2 year, it could be 10 months for some guys who are one and done, but it still says Kansas across the front of the jersey.
You coached pros already too, so I'm wondering I've read some of the quotes of guys that played for you at the NBA level and how they felt like you still made a big impact on their life. I feel like that's a big part of college coaching is not just the on the court stuff, but helping young men grow up to grown men. Do you think that process of doing it at the pro level already helps you for this climate that you're in here right now?
Without a doubt. There's, I think, a seamless transition. It happens. Free agency, you have a guy 1 year, you pour it into him every single day, and you might not have him the next year. I learned this early, San Antonio Spurs, they are ours until they ain't. And so that's been my approach, that I'm going to pour into you every single day, and hopefully that, that pouring matriculate until you stand with us for 4 years, but it might not. But what you can't say is that I wasn't pulling for you and I didn't want the best for you every single day.
Dick Vermeil, the old coach of the Kansas City Chiefs, said that one of the biggest keys to coaching, in his opinion, was, he said, people rarely care how much you know until they know how much you care, right? Like, that's still the truth. If the guys know you care about them, they're more apt to listen to the advice that you have.
And I'm a little biased, but athletes are smart, and they can tell when you're being sincere and when you're not being sincere. And so I think that sincerity goes a long ways. And at the end of the day, if things work out, and if they don't work out, I can always look myself in the mirror as a coach and say that I poured into a player.
Okay, we're visiting with Jacque Vaughn. You just mentioned your time with the Spurs, and I'm really glad that you mentioned that, because obviously at a place like Kansas that is so history-rich, you can explore a lot of different coaching trees. But the one that you're kind of in is really fascinating, because when you talk about Coach Popovich, Bill Self, R.C. Buford, Larry Brown, now coming back around to you, that's pretty remarkable, isn't it? Because you didn't play for Coach Self. You were for Coach Roy here. I'm just kind of curious your thoughts on that coaching tree in general and how full circle it seems to be back here now.
It's like a crazy Krebs cycle a little bit that's kind of worked its way all the way back around. But I learned this early as a rookie in the NBA is the basketball world is 2 blocks long. And so you are impacted and you come across people that have a connection. And the game has been so great to me that I'm able to pour back into these kids here at a university that I love. But to see things connected, my Spurs connection, and to RC and to Coach Self, and for me to come back full circle and be back here, it's the comma that was in my life. It wasn't a period at the end of the sentence, and I love that about life. It's a comma, and we keep rolling. We pour ourselves into people, and we see what's next.
Every coach is going to be different, so even if you come from the same tree, I'm sure you take a little bit of something different from each one of those guys. But with all those names I just mentioned, from Coach Popovich to Larry Brown to Bill Self, is there a common thread or something that you say, man, that ties them all together that you've noticed?
I think the competitive nature of those men. At the end of the day, they do things differently, different ways of motivating, different ways of pushing guys. But at the end of the day, there's an internal fire and a competitiveness that links all those guys together.
We're visiting with Jacque Vaughn. Now, you did mention that things didn't end the way you wanted to in 97. I was there with 14 of my buddies up in the stands. And I mean, I know just as a fan, how that moment left a mark on me. It really changed the way my fandom went as a sports fan forever, because there was no way you guys were going to lose. This was the best basketball team I'd ever seen at Kansas, and I had seen some great ones. And it made me realize whenever you watch your team take the court or the field, anything can happen, and you can't assume any result. And so I always say, like, no loss has ever affected me the same way since then, because that was the one that really changed my perspective on things. I'm curious for you. There has to be – heartbreak usually leads to some of the biggest growth in life. Are there some things, even though that was a heartbreaking moment, that really you grew from when you look back on that experience?
Yeah, I mean, part of Founders is to tie that back into our first conversation. There's no innovation without failure. And really that time in my life taught me a lot of lessons. That the biggest one is to embrace that time. And I think as a youngster, I didn't understand that. I got gray hair now and can appreciate that. I have kids who are the same age as the guys that I'm coaching right now. And that's the biggest message is whether it's an injury you could potentially have, you don't know the outcome of the games, but you show up. And you show up and you do your part every single time. And there might be some outcomes in your favor, and maybe there are some that you think aren't in your favor. But you show up and you show up and you keep doing it over and over again, and you can live with that.
You having college kids now, because the thing about Jacque Vaughn, the player, for those that maybe aren't like my generation that remember, you were a 4.0 student right out of the gate. You always seemed so mature. College kids usually aren't mature. I know I wasn't mature as a college kid. When you look at it now through your kids' eyes, I'm curious, like, do you realize how mature you were at that time, or do you even feel like you had a lot of growing up to do when you look back on it?
I do now look back on it.
I mean, you were like an old soul, I feel like, as a college kid.
I definitely was. And my roommate, Scott Pollard, would probably say yes. He was trying to rub off on me, and I was trying to rub off on him in some good ways. But college was a great time for me. But at the same time, I think, did I enjoy every bit of it that I could have? Maybe not. And so I think that's a learning part of.
Why? Because you were so serious? Or,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and
wow.
so maybe I missed going out on a Friday night because I was trying to do a
I
paper.
made up for you,
yeah,
Coach.
You made up for it. All right, we're good then. Because I was concerned about we were going to play
Yeah.
on Monday, and so I knew I had a paper due, and
Yeah.
I wanted to complete. And so you miss out on some of the things. So I'm more forgiving, definitely, for my kids.
Mm-hmm.
Go have fun. College, you cannot get back these years.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a seriousness to this time in your life also, because you're setting yourself up for the future. So as long as you have an understanding of that, then enjoy yourself.
So you majored in business here. By the way, the new business school is a little different, isn't it?
It's great. I walked through probably a week ago. Amazing.
Yeah. Do you? What was your favorite class? Like, that you had when you were
Yeah.
student?
How about that? I had Dennis Carney. He was a professor, customer focused operations, and it was. I loved it because it tried to put in real life scenarios that you have to figure out things, and so. I'm big at problem solving, and so I guess that's why it kind of really resonated with me is if there is a problem, you figure it out. You can complete or you can complain. And so a lot of times I try to stay away from the complain.
Generation talk here. As soon as you said, if there is a problem, I'm thinking of the Vanilla Ice lyrics. He'll solve it. Jacque Vaughn will solve it if there's a problem. The fact that you remember the name of your professor 30 years almost later. Professors and coaches, I mean, it's the same industry, isn't it? You're molding the minds of young people. What does that say to you? You know what I mean? That you remember the name of a professor that made a mark on your life. I
think it speaks to the impact that teachers and coaches can have on you. There's some relationships that I have with coaches that I'll have forever. They were special to me. There was something that was said or a shared space that we were in that helped me develop as a young kid, develop my mind, get me through a scenario, a situation. And so I tried to take that on myself, whether it's a conversation that you have with a guy. I had one with a player today talking about just having the right spirit when you're on the floor. And those conversations were had with me, and now I'm able to have it with players. So I'm so fortunate to be in this position. I have to ask you this because I remember having a couple classes with guys that played on the basketball team when I was in school. And you can't be a bigger man on campus than to be a basketball player on campus at the University of Kansas. I mean, as soon as I had a class with Ryan Robertson, and he walked in the room and everybody was, look at what was it like being on the other side of that? Like you walk in the room and you know that everybody in the classroom is looking at you. Well, the good thing we won more than we lost, so you felt good when you were walking in after wins. After losses, you might have had your hat on or something like that. But when you come to University of Kansas, you're under a microscope of the basketball world, and the basketball world is watching. And so you represent more than just yourself. And so that part of it I always really took to heart, that I was representing win or loss more than just myself. So, you're also so well-traveled since then. And coming from the West Coast and then coming here, and then after that, going to the East Coast, going, to Texas, everywhere else, I get the benefit of getting to travel to the East Coast, to New York City and places like that to do work now. And when I tell them about Kansas and Kansas City, you can always kind of see it's met with a little bit of like, really, you're that proud of, Kansas. I'm curious for you, what were those conversations like, when you left Kansas and were in other places? The good thing though is if they see you with a Jayhawk, they recognize that Jayhawk, no matter where you are. And so that connection for me, I spent 10 years probably in Brooklyn, in New York area. My kids graduated middle school, graduated high school there. But there wasn't a time that in all my stops where if I was wearing some Kansas gear, I heard a rock chalk.
Yeah, there's no doubt. Well, before we wrap things up, let's talk about the team a little bit right now. And speaking of coaching trees in history, Kansas, North Carolina coming up. It doesn't really get any better than that in the non-conference. What are you most excited about for this game that's coming up?
You said it. I've been to a lot of arenas and to a lot of facilities. I've never played or been to the Dean Smith playing in Chapel Hill. And so I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to seeing our guys compete, high level. Everyone will be watching. They have a good team. We have a good team. Nothing better than that.
And Darryn, we got to ask you about Darryn because as a freshman, you were one of those guys that got on the court right away and everybody knew who you were and you had expectations early on. How's he handling all the expectations? What maybe impresses you the most about him so far?
He's a joy to be around, joy to work with. I think the biggest thing, I love a team atmosphere, and he never takes away from that. I think he's always complimenting his teammates, but at the same time, he is a generational talent. My NBA connections are always calling me, asking about him, and so that'll continue. But I've enjoyed being around him, being in the gym with him, and I think he's just scratching the surface of the player that we're eventually going to see at the end of the year.
And finally, just how would you describe being back here? Like life. What is life like for Jacque Vaughn this time around being back in Lawrence?
I think some of the lessons I learned in life is there's things you can control, you can't control, and some things you can influence. And so I'm at a stage in my life where I don't worry about the things I can't control. I control how I come into this building every day and interact with these kids every day. And then I try to influence others to realize that this is a special place, and then we should be extremely grateful to have that Jayhawk on our chest.
Well, I know this. I think all of Jayhawk Nation is really grateful to have you back in the building, one of the all-time greats. It's great to talk to you, and it's an honor to get to do the first ever podcast with you because I'm sure this isn't going to be the last.
Nate, absolute pleasure, partner.
This is Jacque Vaughn, one of the all-time greats here at the University of Kansas. Don't forget the Jayhawks taking on North Carolina coming up on Friday. As always, we're brought to you by Xfinity and the University of Kansas Health System. We'll see you next time right here on the Jayhawker Podcast.